the Australian GLBTIQ Multicultural Council forum and seminar where we're hopefully going to discuss and have fun and deal with some pretty serious issues, but it should be fantastic. Before I hand it over to the wonderful Auntie Carol Curry to do the Indigenous welcome, and say a few words I think which are very important, I just want to do the horrible housekeeping so that I can get that out of the way. If you haven't registered already, please do, so that you can be kept informed. Now, the information is confidential, but if you'd like to be kept informed of various events that the AGMC does and that QAHC does, please let us know. You've also been given an evaluation sheet. This is really important because we do want to do a whole range of events around Australia, and we want to make sure that we're actually dealing with the issues and discussing and enjoying the kinds of sessions that we do. Toilets. I'm going to feel like a flight steward. Chris, you can probably do this way better than I can. Okay, how do I do that? Actually, do you want to do the demonstration? No. I know. Okay, so the toilets are that way and down the long corridor. So you turn this way and then you turn to your left. I'd be hopeless if I was in an island plane, but you know what I mean. You'll find them all the way down there. Filming is going to take place. As you can see, Neds, Ali and the sister is here, who are doing the filming, and there will be photographs taken. If you do not want to be photographed, that's very understandable. And please see Neds over here, or Aliena, or myself, or Paul Martin. Where's Paul? Hello, there's Paul as well. Please come and see us, because that's very important. We want you to feel really safe and comfortable and have a great time. And I guess that's the last point, or second to last point I want to make, and that is we are going to be discussing some pretty strong issues. We're going to be presenting a whole range of perspectives. We want this to be a respectful, comfortable, happy place. And we hope that everybody can engage in the debates and the discussions, but really enjoy the fact that we're coming from multiple perspectives. And as you said, Carol, that's the whole point, you know, of people are different, and we've got to find ways of working together as well. Finally, horrible rules from universities, no food or drink allowed in this room. So please take care of that with us. Thank you. So that's been my honour to just do a little bit of housekeeping, but it's more honourable and humbling to introduce Auntie Carol Curry to give us a start. Feel free to stand up.
Thank you. Minjigu means hello. Babkalwingiwaba, Jagara Jugu, means welcome to the Jagara country. I like to show my respect to past elders and our present elders, who hold the knowledge and the wisdom and stories to share. Ani Yulang Nahapila. My skin, it belongs to two tribes. The Minjabul, the Gold Coast area, and Yuwayang, my mother. And you have the Malanjali clan, Walter Desert, Tambourine area, and Yubayang, my father. I speak the ancient Yugambeh language from the Wangaberi group of the Yugambeh region of southeast Queensland. Aboriginal culture, it is the oldest living culture in the world, and our people give praise to our Creator. He placed us in this beautiful land, which was named Australia, gave them their culture, and that culture, it has been taught and handed down from generation to generation for over 60,000 years. In our spiritual ceremony, our art and music, and Dreamtime stories. We all know Australia has become a multicultural nation. I've been adopted as an Aboriginal elder for QAC for the last 10 years. I work with them and give them elders advice of, with mainly about Aboriginal, gay and lesbian girls. And I find with Aboriginal gays and lesbians that Aboriginal culture is very unique. It's very, very special. It's very, we live by our culture. We live by Dreamtime religion. And it's so old that it can never be broken or taken away from us. So, and there's a lot of acceptance from our elders I have 2 gay grandsons. Third oldest son, big macho man, works in the prison. I put him down a peg. He's the father. I said, you don't treat your son like that. We are a strong people. When you picked your son up when he was born, you loved him. That love will never change. So keep that love strong in your heart for him. He has his own journey. Like everyone else has a journey to follow in their life. I find children are only borrowed to parents. So we don't dictate. Every child has their own journey. Their life is very special. But keep your culture strong, because that is your identity of who you are, where you come from, and that will help you jump over hurdles in life. And I could be living on the other side of the world. That would not change who I am. I would never forget who I am. My land is very special to me, my culture. So that is very, very important. So live with these rules. Don't give away your identity, but follow your heart. And remember, life is very short and it is very, very precious. We don't know how long our journey on earth will take. But in doing that, you all have a lovely day, and I will say, Nindara Tina Baka. I am going now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Auntie Carol. Certainly set the scene and your own story and family stories. The fact that we are on journeys and our journeys are interweaving is very important. Thank you so much. And I'd love to call up Paul Martin, the Executive Director of QUAC, and Alina Mohammed Ali, the Chair of the AGMC, who are going to introduce the various guests.
Thank you very much, and hello and good afternoon everyone. Thanks Auntie Carol for your welcome to country here today, and for your support of QUAC over the last 10 years. Auntie Carol comes to all of our events and does the welcome to country for us and for all over Brisbane for other groups and communities as well. So a very well respected elder in the community. Thanks Auntie Carol. For those of you who don't know what Healthy Communities is, hopefully most of you do, I think you probably do, we're an LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender health and community development organisation. Used to be the Queensland AIDS Council. 2005-06 we changed our name to Queensland Association for Healthy Communities, which we pronounced QUAC. We figured out that most people don't have any idea what QUAC means. So as of Wednesday, we're now going by the name Healthy Communities, which does kind of, you can get that, and in the logo it also says lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans, so that when you see our logo, hopefully you can understand what the organisation is about and we can be a bit more out there than just some random letters, QAHC, and no one knew what they meant. So Healthy Communities from now on. I shall try and remember to say that. QUAC, see, I can't even remember that. Healthy Communities, and I'm not going to go HC, I hope that, but anyway. Healthy Communities is really pleased to work in partnership with the Australian GLBTIQ Multicultural Council in putting on this event. They approached us through our Healthy Communities Fund to put on the event. This is the third, I believe, that they've done around the country. And the Healthy Communities Fund is a small grants fund for LGBT organisations and groups and services from across Queensland, and people can apply to that fund for small grants to undertake various activities in the community. So that's been going for about 3 or 4 years now, and I think has supported over 50 projects across the state. And all of that money is from community fundraising. We don't receive any government funding to do that. That's all from donations and fundraising to keep the Healthy Communities Fund going. And the Healthy Communities Fund made a small contribution to the cost of putting on this forum today. Healthy Communities also has a LGBT multicultural action group, and they're kind of co-hosting this, I guess. We set up the Multicultural Action Group for 3 main purposes. One was to help QUAC be better at being culturally inclusive and culturally competent. We're not there yet. We probably never will be there. There will always be room for improvement. But QUAC wants to make sure that in the way in which our organisation operates, whether that be staff or volunteers or the programs and services that we run or our board or any aspect of the organisation, that we are constantly improving the way in which we are embracing multicultural Queensland. And we've still got some way to go on that. So the first purpose of the Multicultural Action Group is to advise QUAC on those issues. But the Multicultural Action Group, as well as bringing together QUAC people, healthy communities people, and LGBTI people from a multicultural background in the community, it also brings together mainstream multicultural service organisations. And that's the second aim of the Multicultural Action Group, is to raise the profile of LGBT people within multicultural organisations. Now, there's a long description of LGBT, that's a shorthand for a whole range of different ways in which people identify themselves and their sexuality, and I'm sure that's something that we'll talk about today, but we recognise that not everybody uses the terms lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender, and of course there are more people in our communities and that intersex and genderqueer and so on. So it's part of the role of the Action Group is to raise these issues for mainstream multicultural organisations. And then the third purpose of the Multicultural Action Group is to look at, well, what are the particular services or the needs and services of LGBTI people from a multicultural background here in Queensland. So we're trying to put on projects and activities that bring people together and ideally support various initiatives. So there's some groups that we support, but also to look at what services might be needed. Unfortunately, this doesn't receive any money at all, so it's through the goodwill of the QUAC staff, the mainstream organisations, and importantly, LGBT individuals from a multicultural background who participate. So if you aren't interested in getting involved in the Multicultural Action Group, then feel free to see myself or volunteers, Johan. And Johan is a member of the group, so if you've got any questions, please speak to him. So thank you all for coming along again, and I hope you have a very interesting and informative afternoon, and I'll be staying here with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to be very quick because I'm one of the organisers of this forum and I don't want to be speaking too much. I'm standing in front of the AGMC banner. AGMC stands for the Australian Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Queer Multicultural Council. I have said that so many times over the last six years now, 2004, 7 years, that I've actually, I think, perfected it. The only time it doesn't sound so good is when I do a radio interview because you get that popping noise. So, not so good then. But the reason that we call ourselves the AGMC is, well, we try and cover as much as possible, but as Paul said, we're not necessarily going to capture each and every person. And we don't even try and say that, oh no, we represent all of you, or we speak for all of you. We don't say that. What we do say is that we hold ourselves out to be the peak body in Australia. Okay? Yes, we're based in Melbourne, but we say we're the peak body in Australia that is willing and does work with multicultural groups, multicultural queer groups in each and every state in Australia. And I should say territories too, but I don't think we've had much of a headway in the Northern Territory yet. But that will happen. It will happen. It's a work in progress. So I won't go too much into what we do because Maria, you'll do that for us. Excellent. What I will say is that we are a not-for-profit association. As Paul says, we rely, as the healthy communities, rely on volunteer work. Well, we are all volunteers. We are the tiniest committee in the world. I sit on a bunch of different committees for work and outside of work, and I cannot believe that there is just 5 of us. And there is 5 of us committed people who obviously want to kill ourselves for this purpose, but, you know, why not? Paul also mentioned that this is the 3rd one, and yes, it is. This is the 3rd forum or workshop that we are putting on with this very title, Is My Sexuality More Important Than My Culture or Religion? Because that's been a theme that just hasn't and will not go away. It's something that we get contacted about constantly. It's something that we see, whether it's in the mainstream media or in the GLBTIQ media. It's an issue that people have thought about or they haven't thought about. Now, I did a radio interview on, I think it's 4Z, 3Z, there are a bunch of Zs on it, I couldn't... 4Z. Thank you. That's one of your radio stations, I'm not being obnoxious, I just can't remember the name, a few nights ago. And it was very interesting because the interviewers were actually asking questions, and I found it a little bit hard to get across the importance of it because whereas they did think there was a reason and a need to have a forum, they weren't really sure as to who our market was, like who were we targeting and who was actually coming to this. And that I found very interesting, because those kind of questions are the kind of questions that if Brisbane and Queensland are just beginning to have the discussion now today, well then that means that there is a lot of work to be done still. And I say that because I expected 150 people to come to this based on my Sydney and Melbourne experience. And about 2 weeks ago, I emailed Paul panicking because I only had like 28 people. And Paul said, no, that's a really good number. That's 28 people who've said they will come to a forum on Saturday because they're interested about it. And so that shifted my little Melbourne, Sydney-centric brain and told me, well, back off. Don't judge Brisbane on the basis of what you've seen in the past. Judge the forum on the basis of the people who actually come to it, all of you here today. The ones who've taken the time out to be here on a Saturday, to come and see, maybe because it personally affects you, maybe you have yourself had to struggle with your religious identity or your cultural identity and or your gender or sexual and sexual identity, or maybe you're just curious. You know, I'm not going to ask you why. None of the organisers are going to ask you why you're here. That's not the purpose of today. The purpose of today is, as Maria said, having a safe and supportive environment where we can have the discussion, where we can talk about the different issues, and we'll hear from 5 presenters, and yes, you'll hear from me as well, because I've had my own struggles in the past, and you'll hear about how and what or where we fit in this whole wonderful, colourful rainbow. So just to quickly wind up and say that on a little bit of a sad note, well, a very sad note, Chris, who does live here, and Maria, who's staying with Chris, they were broken into this morning, actually. They're both a little bit shaken about that. They were broken into while they were actually here. And the bizarre thing is that the thieves took all of the AGMC membership forms, which I was planning on handing out, forcing you all to join. So I'm not happy about that.
And my address book and diary.
And Maria's address book and diary. So it is quite traumatic and quite annoying. But having said that, we do look for members and we do want you to join. So if you are interested in joining, come and see me afterwards, and I'll personally post you out a membership form, so you don't have to go to the website and download it, because I know none of you ever will. So if you give me your address, but if you give me your address, I'll post you a form. And I might even send you a pre-address stampy thingy, whatever, so you post it back to me. And probably on that note, I'll end up and I'll end now, and I'll return to Maria. Thank you.
Bill, I might just ask you to. Actually, the positive thing is the big box of AGMC stuff and the bag of AGMC stuff, all of that was in the bedroom door, so they couldn't get to my wallet and everything else. So AGMC became this big box barrier before the bed, before my wallet and the bag, but it was a bit scary. So excuse us if we're kind of like whizzing around. But anyway, let's get on with this. This is way more important. Yeah, thank you. Great, thank you. Before I begin my little spiel, which is probably the horror or the boring bit of the day, I'll later introduce the 5 wonderful speakers, and also we'll have a short DVD after lunch, and then a general discussion, which will be absolutely fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been given the task of doing the overview academic bit, but I'm not going to carry on. But it might give you a taste of what my deacon students have to put up with. But also feel free to email me at any point, because that's where I am at Deakin Uni. I'm really honoured to be a committee member with Aliena and working on a whole range of things for the AGMC. Okay, so basically what my job is to do is, what are we on about? What does it mean to be multicultural, multi-faith and multi-sexual? And what are we aiming to do, all of us in this room, in the way we live our lives, in the way we work with each other, in the way that we actually get out and work? And by the way, one disappointment I've had is that we've been trying to get someone from the Ethnic Communities Council of Queensland to be here today. It hasn't happened. And Paul, I forgot to tell you the things of today. I got a call at about 6 o'clock last night. I was already on the flight, saying someone was going to call us, and it hasn't happened. That's our next task. We'll get there, so we'll just keep going. Okay, the first thing we want to do is actually work and construct and develop people being able to have healthy sexual, cultural and gender identities. That people should be allowed to and feel comfortable and feel honoured in living the multiple selves that they are. That's what our aim is, that we should be able to go anywhere in this world, anywhere in any community, and be able to be open and comfortable and safe with the various parts of ourselves. That people live in multiple life worlds, that all of us belong to many different communities. We belong to a cultural community, a home community. We belong to a queer community, or many. We belong to several other communities, school communities, workforce places. And we belong to this wider, still unfortunately, very heterosexist, heteronormative and very gender normative society. So our aim then, and what we should all be trying to do, is make it possible for us to move in and out of different worlds and to manage the conflicts that sometimes come from wanting to live out your various selves, our various selves in those various communities. And unfortunately, what comes with all of that, and we'll hear from the speakers, is the fact that people experience stigma and discrimination from a range of places. So you can move into a cultural community and they'll love you for being a WOG or Asian or whatever, but they'll hate the sexual side of you or the gender non-normative side. Or you might move into a gay and lesbian community or a gay and lesbian venue, and suddenly the fact that you're Muslim or the fact that you're Jewish or the fact that you have a particular colour skin or something like that puts you outside. And we do have stories in Melbourne, for example, of gay men coming from diverse Arabic backgrounds going into a gay venue and being called a terrorist. And those ridiculous issues. So racism, sexism, gender normativity, homophobia are kind of experienced all over the place. We have a big job to do with our multicultural communities. We are working really hard with our ethnic communities councils. We now have a great person who's on our side, Pino Migliorino, who's the chair of the Federation of Ethnic Communities Councils of Australia. So he's working from within the Federation to get things happening within our cultural communities to acknowledge. We've had some breakthroughs in some of the Muslim communities in Victoria, so it's going to happen. And I guess this is a bit of a diagram of the way things are lived, unfortunately. But I don't want to make people sound like victims, because there's an incredible amount of resistance, incredible amount of agency. We are all getting on with our lives and living as best we can, but we have to keep shifting those, the racism, homophobia, and some of the issues that I'm sure some of you who are working in health services will see coming through very strongly. And some of the constructs around homosexuality. I'll only keep you to time. And by the way, anyone who wants this, please let me know. Email me, or because I'll just zap it to you. And I guess we've got to understand context. We've got to understand why some of our ethnic, cultural, migrant, refugee communities may have some of these views. Because there are factors such as the process of migration, the fear of community stigma. In becoming a migrant, many people experience this need to maintain a cohesive community and need to project a particular image against foreigners, against a whole lot of other issues. Sometimes employment, housing, other so-called practical factors become far more significant than addressing what they think are issues that are less significant. These constructions of homosexuality as a Western sin, sickness, crime, are issues that unfortunately we hear from many communities and many communities members. So one of the things that we want to do very strongly, and I was talking to Auntie Carol about this, is that we've got to look at the impact of colonialism and Christianisation on many of the cultures that have come to Australia. Because we do know, as in Indigenous communities, that there were many understandings, and I'm not putting any community on a pedestal, and I'm not into that, before civilization everything was perfect. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. But what we need to acknowledge, and one of the things I'm trying to do in schools, for example, is try and get young people who are coming from diverse cultures, who are homophobic, especially some of the boys playing the kind of macho thing, is to acknowledge that within their own cultures there were many understandings of gender and sexual diversity. You know, the two-spirited people in Native American Indian cultures, for example. The Whawhaine and the various, we say GLBTIQ, the peoples of the Pacific say, and I still can't say it, MVB-VAF. There are different understandings, which is very significant. In Thailand, for example, there are 5 genders. Katoy, and all those things are really significant. And we've got to go back and reclaim the positives and get our Christianised, and I'm not against Christianity, but our very Christianised, fundamentally Christianised and colonised peoples that come into this country, who have actually had their own histories, their pre-colonial histories erased, and yet it's in their art. Some of the beautiful Māori art that was destroyed, for example, on the Takatapui, when Christians came in. So I guess we want to ask questions like, is it the culture or the religion? We know there are elements of religions that are not homophobic. There are some wonderful books being written on Islamic homosexualities with some of the best Muslim philosophers who are living in same-sex relationships. Somehow that kind of conveniently gets set aside by fundamentalists. Is it poverty? Is it lack of education? I give one example here of some women from some young lesbians from an Italian background who in Coburg in Melbourne were invited to go to a senior citizens club to work with older Italian women. And the older Italian women who had young kids coming out, grandkids coming out, basically wanted to talk to a lesbian. And one of the questions these older women wanted to ask was, are you the same down there as me? You know, now that might seem funny, but this is the lack of education, the ignorance about their own bodies, around sexualities that these women had experienced in their home country. So sometimes it's not the fact that people are definitely deliberately homophobic, it's a lack of knowledge. And of course Vicky, one of the young lesbians, said, well, I'm not going to show you in this setting. But yeah, we just happen to want to use it with different people, that's all. And what came out of that session was some of the older women saying, if I had my time again, I would have ditched the husband years ago and I would have been in love with another woman. And so we've got to acknowledge some of those sadnesses and lack of opportunities that have come with migrant communities here. And is it spirituality or man-made dogma and the interpretation of religious texts? So we're asking all of that. My last two questions are really important here that we're always dealing with within the AGMC. Who are the gatekeepers of the communities we're working with? Because they want to give out a particular version of their community. We want to find all the alternative views. We're working with some Islamic women, for example, who are saying, you know, there's lots of different ways of looking at this, and then we have to go through gatekeepers. So our job is to find the different views within different communities. I won't rave on about that, I just have. This is a lot of words. What I'm trying to say there is our multiculturalism in Australia has been set on this idea that we maintain cultural heritages, we maintain cultural traditions. Some of that, and we allow for religious freedoms. Some of that is dangerous. It is not racist to challenge oppressions and hatreds and injustices that come with some traditions. We do that with all traditions, whether they are Anglo, Welsh, Scottish, English, any traditions. It's about how do we maintain religious and cultural traditions, but at the same time acknowledge that a whole set of oppressions and ignorances come with all of those. And we've got to find a way of working all of those. And that's what we do. So finally, this is what we do is we run forums like this as the AGMC, but we also have dance parties. We hold bocce nights. We've infiltrated the good old Venetor clubs and the Marque clubs in Melbourne, and the Italian gay lesbian groups actually run bocce nights there. We hold pizza events, we hold dance parties, basically social forums, support networks, and we set up a whole lot of art events and things like that. So feel free to work with us. I know Paul will be fantastic to keep working here in running a whole lot of events. Not everyone wants to come to a talk fest like this, but some people just want to get out and party and dance, and we want to provide for that as well. And I should finish off here. I'm just going to find the one question that's important. They're probably all important. People are sometimes being told to come out very strongly. I think some of the things that we have to identify is that, as Sekne Beckett, a Muslim psychologist counselor, says, it's about supporting people to invite people into their lives. And I'm rushing here. I've talked about that one. This is the one that I think is really important. Sometimes, as I said, our multicultural communities are not so much worried about sexuality. They're often worried about a whole lot of other concerns that come with coming to a new country. We're not, you know, and I hear people say this all the time, older parents, my children are not alone if they don't have a family. My children are doomed to hell. All I see is Mardi Gras, and that's all that it is about being LGBT, etc. You know, and partying is fine if you're straight and wearing nothing in Venice, but apparently it's not okay if you're doing it and you're gay in Australia. And all these other factors that come with it. So I'm sorry I've rushed through that, but I think my stuff is less important, but just hopefully opening up the issues. Because it's now my joy to invite our wonderful speakers to come up to the front, who are going to speak from their personal and professional perspectives as well. And I'm just going to get out of that.
Can I just check, has everyone received a speaker's bio? Do you want one?
Yeah.
I know around here, yeah.
And the first speaker is George. Yeah, sure.